Good evening, everybody, and welcome to our first ever Playhouse Icons. We are very excited about tonight's performance. It's not really a performance. We're really excited to have these guests with us tonight. I'm going to hand things over in just a second, but first I want to remind people about a couple of upcoming events that are part of Playhouse Week. This is our first Playhouse Week, and it's been going really well so far. On Saturday, we invite you to join us for our Playhouse Family Potluck at Frontier Park, hosted by the Playhouse Wing, plus the Erie Playhouse Showstoppers will be performing on the amphitheater stage at Frontier Park at 6:30 on Saturday. The potluck starts at 5:30 and then their performance at 6:30 on Saturday. You can find information on that at erieplayhouse.org. And then on Sunday, our big event, the launch party and our 2025 season reveal. That'll get underway at 6 p.m. next door at 5 Iron Golf. We're very excited to have the reception next door before the show. Come over here at 7:15 for a performance and for the reveal of our 2025 season, and then head back over for some incredible desserts, lots of pies, right, Terry? All kinds of goodies for you back at 5 Iron after the launch performance on Sunday. So you can RSVP by contacting the box office, and all that information is on our website as well. Now, on to Playhouse Icons. I'm actually going to hand things over to one of our former executive directors. She was executive director from 2006 to 2017. Prior to that, served as youth theater and development director. She will be moderating tonight along with her husband. That's Almitra Clerkin, by the way. I didn't say her name. This is going really well. Almitra Clerkin. Thank you, Almi. Along with,
thank you.
There we go. Hold for applause. Father Shawn Clerkin will also be moderating our conversation tonight. Shawn is the former director of theater at Gannon and the former first gentleman of the Erie Playhouse. An important role. So I will turn things over to Shawn and Almi, and they will introduce our Playhouse icons.
Great.
Thanks,
Thank you, Zach.
Thanks.
Wonderful. So, great opportunity. I get to introduce Judy because ladies before gentlemen. And so when Almi became the executive director at the Playhouse, David looked at me and he said, "Do you realize you're now the new Judy?" And I, of course, said, "I guess I am." Judy and David, of course, came to Erie from Newcastle. He had been leading the community theater down there, and she had been in elementary education. Her career in education continued as she served different schools in and around the Erie community. Her expertise developed over decades, leading classrooms in public schools, earned her the responsibility of coordinating all of the teacher education programs for Mercyhurst. Her skills as an educator, however, were never just in the classroom. She always had time, and she still does, Carla and her children, of course, she still does have an impact on countless Playhouse volunteers' children. Our own son, Seamus, along with many others, will turn to her and call her Aunt Judy still. Judy also shared her love of performing for the Playhouse. She was a fantastic actor and singer, and I insist she was a fantastic singer. She could easily steal any scene from in any show that she was in. She was also a wonderful pit musician, and she shared her strong and steady baton as a conductor of many Playhouse shows. Oh, yeah. Her greatest strength, however, was her behind-the-scenes inspiration to many, as well as to David. They didn't argue much, from what I understand. They weren't ones to raise their voices with each other. However, Judy had no trouble expressing her opinions to her spouse. David shared with me one time when he had written a letter to me. Does anybody remember David's letters? They were quite wonderful. But this particular missive came to me, but before he sent it to me, he turned to Judy and he gave it to her to read. And David shared this story with me. Judy read the letter and looked at him and said, "David, you're an ass." And that was her response as she just gingerly walked away. But quite honestly, that honesty that she shared with Judy, or with David, has always been matched by her kindness and her generosity. And we're very grateful to have Judy Matthews with us this evening.
Thank you. So growing up in an art-loving family meant having opportunities to enjoy the arts that Erie had to offer. So we would often, as a family, attend concerts, galleries, museums, and of course, theater productions. A most memorable experience was going to the Village Dinner Theater, run by the late Playhouse icon Ben Agresti, and seeing The Man of La Mancha. I'll never forget hearing Father Tom McSweeney's powerful and personal performance of The Impossible Dream. Now, Monsignor Tom has been a mainstay of the Erie theater scene for decades. He has shared his talent on many stages, inspired young theater artists, and earned countless recognitions. His powerful persona earned him countless leadership roles, shepherding in many churches in our region, managing arts and media from founder of the Theater and Communication Arts program at Gannon 52 years ago, Director of Diocesan Communications for the Erie Catholic Diocese, Christopher's in New York City, and more. But my favorite Monsignor, his love has always been for the Playhouse, where he has shared his talents as performer, director, and board member. He is truly one of Erie's theater legendary performers, and we are blessed to have him with us this evening. Monsignor Tom McSweeney.
Thank you. Thank you, sweetie.
Thank you. So we have some questions for them, and certainly if we see hands go up and you have one, let us know, but we got a list to go through first. But so I guess our first question we really want to know is how you first became connected to this Erie Playhouse from your beginning.
Well,
Judy.
sure. Background story for David is that from the time he was a little boy, he was interested in theater. As a matter of fact, his parents bought him a tent to put up so that he'd be booked. And when they went to the grocery store, when they came back, he had his curtains and they were in the middle of doing a play. This might have been when he was 6 or 7. And a few years later, when they went to the grocery store, Prudy, his mother, said, "David, you better not have a show going when we come back." That's all he needed. When they came back from the grocery store, he already had all the neighborhood kids, and they were making and producing Little Black Sambo in the garage. And they had gone out and gotten shrubs, and the next day he had a horrible case of poison ivy, but they did do Little Black Sambo. So poor Prudy, she had a lot she had to live with, but that just started it. And then he went on, and when he graduated, he did some things at Newcastle High School and went over to Kenley Players. And he walked in, and John was sitting at his desk, and he said, "Yes, can I help you?" And David said, "I want to work for you." And John said, "Well, what can you do?" He said, "Nothing." But John hired him as a painter for drops and things in the back. So that started it. And he was there for 2 years. And then he came back, and we were friends. We were close friends for about 3 years until it came a little closer, and we decided we would get married. He says the story, Judy told me we had to get married because he had gone and taken the test for the Peace Corps, and they had accepted him, and he said, "I'm not going without you, so you better go over tomorrow and take the test." So that was the story, and they were going to send us to Bolivia, and we were going to work in educational TV. Well, we didn't do that, needless to say. We got married first. And the next summer, we went over to visit John Kenley, and he said, "Darling," to me, "what can you do?" I said, "Not much. I can sew a little bit." He says, "All right, you'll be in charge of the costumes." That was really a shocker. So I worked for Kenley for 2 years, and our friend Christy Kuntz also worked over there, and we stayed in a hotel. He paid for it, and he became John Kenley's assistant. And so we were there another 2 years, and Erie contacted Kenley, and I don't know who, but they said they were looking for a director. And he said, "I got one for you." And he sent David's name in. here we go. So he came home and said, guess what? We're going to Erie. I said, okay. And we came in 1972, and we were out at the Wesleyville Playhouse. And he was first hired as the business manager. And then he got hired as the director in January. And that started our love with the Erie Playhouse. And Charlie, he became friendly with Charlie and went through the Village Dinner Theater. And he asked Charlie if he would come on and work for the Erie Playhouse. And Charlie said, oh, sure.
Yeah,
So
that's great.
now, correct me if I'm wrong, Charlie. So Charlie had a job, and he quit the job, and he was on his way to Wesleyville the first day, and he heard on the news that the Erie Playhouse in Wesleyville was on fire. Charlie said, oh. But we got that taken care of, and that started
That's
the
wonderful.
love of the Erie Playhouse.
Thank you for sharing that. And Father Tom, you must have had a story.
1957. I'm in the 8th grade at St. Joseph's up the hill here. And I really was shy as a kid. My mom was born and raised in England and loved the theater. She couldn't perform at all, but she loved going to the theater. Took me down to the Erie Playhouse, which had begun in 1928 as a small theater known as the Little Theater. It was part of a movement that had begun in Europe as they were beginning to produce plays that were naturalistic, like the fourth wall removed in a room, not a big operatic stage, but literally the fourth wall removed on a room. Naturalistic plays, Chekhov, Ibsen, plays of the modern experience where you were sitting in a small audience of about 150, 200 people, like you were watching through the walls into their front rooms or whatever. Some of them were so naturalistic that they even had water running on stage, like in a kitchen scene. But my mom, and my dad for that matter, but my mom particularly, took me to see a show at the Erie Playhouse. And even when I had begun under Vincent in 1928, Newell Tarrant, who had been kind of involved in the entertainment part of the Army during the Second World War. After the war, he got a job here as the director of this theater, which had been closed down during the war. The Erie Playhouse took off, and seeing plays and experiencing small-sized musicals. And the first thing I saw down there was Oklahoma. Can you imagine on that little stage? And this was not a little theater accommodating a large production, but that did me in right there.
That's wonderful.
Newell Tarrant cast me in a show called Aladdin and His Magical Lamp. It was their version of youth theater at that time. Bill Cohen was his assistant in that sort of thing. And one of my favorite memories at the beginning was Newell Tarrant taking me backstage during the run of this Aladdin's lamp thing that was selected because they were also doing King and I, and they could use the same set for the Aladdin and his lamp and all this other stuff. And Newell Tarrant, they had a little peephole in the back, right, where the proscenium was actually. And he said, now watch the audience. Keep your eyes on the audience. You know what's going on the stage. You know where the laugh lines are. You know what's going on the stage. Keep that in the back of your mind. But watch them and see how they react. And he taught me the essence of what live theater is about. And I would be back there, my little bit part in Send Me No Flowers, I was with it was an equity house. They had equity actors from New York working at that time here, and had an arrangement with Actors Equity to have community people in the shows. And coming to see what live theater was really all about, because one audience was different. We all know this in the theater. Friday night can be an uproarious, wild audience getting all the jokes, and then you have a sedate audience on Saturday. But they were reacting, but they weren't reacting out loud. And how do you pace yourself? Did me in, and I began to see that there was a craft here, and working with people like Dom DeLuise and some of these Henderson Forsyth as a young kid had me launched. And I've been with the Erie Playhouse ever since, over 50 years with the Erie Playhouse.
The length of your tenure is really fascinating. Elmy and I, we haven't been around nearly as long, but we certainly have had an opportunity to perform on this stage. But you've been here for 40 years, but certainly you have had the opportunity to perform on many stages during your time at the Playhouse, or work on many stages. What were some of the more positive experiences in other stages in town, or maybe what were some of the challenges of working other places?
The Erie Playhouse at one time had the Peninsula Playhouse, a tent. And that's where I first got to see Rita Dubé doing Happy Talk, South Pacific. And that experience out there was unto itself. That eventually folded and started up again under Roger Nichols, and then that folded as well. But that was quite an experience. But I really do have an affection for the intimacy of that West 7th Street Playhouse. The audience of only maybe about 200, 230, and the intimacy. The other experiences were the Village Dinner Theater, which was another whole venue altogether. And there was young Ben, making it happen out there. We were painting all kinds of things. We had a nice round thing that you could revolve the sets around. That lasted for, about 3 weeks, right, Charlie? We were all too heavy for it, so then we just had to move the props around. Again, it's that intimacy. It's the live theater. There's just nothing like it. And so the different venues, indeed, different stages. But when the Erie Playhouse got this facility here, doesn't have fly space. It's a movie theater. And what happened with Joe Hassler and so many other talented people to make it into a truly working theater, you couldn't tell the difference between this and some of those other experiences because of the intimacy of this audience.
Judy, were there spaces that you really loved or didn't love so much?
Well, we didn't only come to the Strand. Before we were here, we performed in Iroquois and McDowell and Fairview as well. We were still out at Wesleyville, but we knew the time was coming, and each of those places that allowed us to be part of them were different. And yet they were all the same in that we were doing a show with people, that we were a team, and we just had a wonderful time. McDowell, I think, was one of my favorites because they had a thrust stage, which means that over on the aisle side, there was another extension, and you could have a scene going on there, and then come here, and then there'd be another scene over here. And they had abilities to fly things, and that meant that we could have drops, and we had someone who could paint drops who came from Kenley. And McDowell, the seating was good. Everybody could see. When we were at Fairview, that was lovely. They just welcomed us with open arms. And we did one show there over here. And we had Dawn Weborg. Many of you may know her as band director. And she had her band, a little, I don't know, is the jazz band or something, be the music for the show. And boy, did that add. Then we went to Iroquois and they just welcomed us with open arms. And we would do a show and we maybe have one weekend and then we'd have to put everything in a big truck and trudge it across town to Iroquois, not Iroquois, to McDowell or Fairview. And so it was never dull.
That was always the hardest part, I think, was loading up the trucks with the sets as they'd be built one place and we'd try to take them to another place to set them up, and then we'd have to strike immediately to get everything out of the space. I appreciated the work that Joe and other designers did on designing for those spaces and for those moves. They were massive moves,
Yeah. Well, and isn't it interesting, Judy mentioned Fairview and over here. So I want to ask you what one of your favorite David Matthews stories is in a second. But I don't know that I remember any that happened to me directly, but the one over here that was at Fairview, when there's a huge number, I can't remember if it's the end of Act 1 or beginning of Act 2, that it's totally timed to music. It's totally, it's choreographed stage. The lines have to fit the music perfectly. Costume changes galore. David said, whatever you do, don't stop. Don't stop. Just keep going. We have to be sure we can get through this. And Ray Flint, another icon, comes on stage at one point. There, it started to go, and they're moving through it. And he comes out stage, and he has a hat, and he goes, David, what do you want me to do with this hat? And David said, shove it up your, So that's one of my favorite stories of David. So one of your favorite stories you might have, or any director that you may have had.
Well, I never got any letters correcting me from David Matthews.
Oh, you're the one.
But we were doing, we were doing The Life and Times of Nicholas Nickleby. 9.5-hour production. What, we were out of our minds. David got a cast together. We went to Cleveland to see the show. We came back. Anybody who was doing theater was in that production. I got to play Nicholas Nickleby, the lead.
Bravo.
And my God, it was like memorizing 3 novels, the lines and everything. And we got out. Was it here, Judy? Did we do that show here?
It was here.
Yeah.
I remember seeing it.
It was broken up into 2 parts. You could come in the afternoon and see part 1 in the evening, or there was a way to take it in at least 2 days at the most. But I'm on the stage. We had a nice audience in here, and way up there somewhere, this baby was carrying on. Oh, Judy, you're involved in this one. And I'm saying, geez, I spent all this time, like 6 months learning lines, and they're all listening to that kid carrying on up there. And so I got a little prima donna-ish or something. And I said to Judy, somebody's got to go up there and and then David heard that I had actually said, just take the baby, put it in a bag, and take it outside the theater and leave it there until the show is over. Not nice. Catholic priest.
Oh, no.
Confession for days. At any rate, so the performance, sitting there putting on the makeup and everything, and David comes and puts the chair next to where I'm doing the makeup and said, I have to talk to you. That was not nice. What? You said that you wanted somebody to go up and put the baby in a plastic bag and then put it out on West 10th Street and hope that somebody would, it got embellished. I didn't say any of those other things. But I did not get a letter, but I did get a slap on the hands. Yeah. You just simply don't do that. That's my David Matthews story.
Judy, you have
Judy,
many,
pick
but
one.
pick
I'm sure
one,
you have a
this one.
lifetime of them.
Well, David was an enigma, but he learned a lot of what he did from John Kenley. And John Kenley had shock. Shock was his first thing. He wanted to shock you. So you would go in and meet him and he'd say something terrible. And you go, oh, but then you end up loving him. Well, unfortunately, or fortunately, David took some of his tutelage. And when he died, I received so many letters and cards, beautiful things from people. And almost to a person, the first thing they would say was, do you know what he said to me? And do you know what happened when I met him? And then I fell in love with him.
Yeah.
He liked to shock people. And that's what it seems like. Somebody would come in to audition and he'd say, what are you auditioning for? Well, immediately that scared people. But they all ended this diatribe by saying, we loved him. We got used to him and we loved him and he did good work.
And could I just add on David, and we're talking about Henry Vincent and Bill Cohen and so forth. David had a long tenure here, but from their very beginning, David Matthews was a collaborator with all of the theaters. I would hold him as a pivotal person who came into town, and he came to the Village Dinner Theater, and he is sharing costumes that he brought up from Newcastle. And this collaborative thing began. It didn't matter whether a Gannon student was going to be in a Mercyhurst production or, everything was collaborated. We shared all the available talent, and it really took theater up a couple of notches because we just loved doing theater no matter where, and we were supporting each other from talent. Joe Hassler would come over and do lights for us at Gannon. Philip Rodsden, the great designer that was brought in by David from Kenley Players, was here. But then Philip was doing sets for Romeo and Juliet and Hamlet at my place. His collaborative instinct was quite unique, no territoriality. And I tip to David for that. That sense of collaboration was pivotal to the success and the advancement and progress of theater in Erie.
I agree.
I can't agree with you more. I have so many memories of David, but one of the things that I have to remember are the shows that we worked on together. And I'll never forget the first time I auditioned. Trisha Yates and I auditioned for him together. We were doing West Side Story back in 1984. And and we walked in, we thought, we're going to audition together. And see, we sang and did the entire balcony scene from West Side Story. And he looked at us both after he played. And David played athletically. Can I say that? He played the piano like he was lifting weights. I mean, it was just this kind of pounding on it. And he had played through it, and we did the whole entire thing. And we were very proud of ourselves because we were 18 and thought we were hot. And he looked at us both and he went, adequate. And that was all he said to us at the end of the audition. But the fact that he said anything, I think, was also one of those indications. And that was the beginning of our relationship. I loved working on West Side Story both times with him. I loved having the opportunity to do Les Mis with him. We were just so blessed to be able to do that. Do you have favorite shows that you worked on with him? I mean, just something that just really stood out for you.
Les Mis.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That has to be my favorite show of all that I've either worked on or have been a part of. With this man singing those songs, Bring 'Em Home. Is that the name of it?
Mm-hmm.
I would be in the wings every night just to hear that. And it was magic. I couldn't believe I was in Erie, Pennsylvania, seeing this beautiful show with this man who was just out of sight. I never missed one of those moments. So that show is just haunting me forever. It's just so beautiful.
Monsignor, do you have a favorite?
A favorite show, Charlie Cortori is here, and David was going to be directing My Fair Lady, and he cast it beautifully. Again, everybody in town was in that production, and it just takes my breath away to see his generosity, David's generosity, in passing the baton to Charlie. David just wasn't up to directing that particular show. And Charlie took over, and I'm up there ranting and raving as Higgins, and Charlie, wonderful director that he always is, said, well, if you keep talking like that, the audience is going to hate you. You have to modulate. And Charlie, you directed me in that. And I'm so grateful for the talent of such people that we didn't take exception to being directed. We were held in check when it came to thinking that you're the star, because it's all collaborative here. It's the people that are right now running the microphones and who put up the lights and so forth. This doesn't happen just because of the people that are sitting here. And through Charlie, it was the first time I ever went up on a line. In the musical, there's, what kind of woman would be like a man? But, and I went completely blank, and I'm going, and I actually said, stop the music, but you don't stop the music. And somehow I got back on track and so forth. And I must have run those lyrics, Charlie, 40 times before we did the show the next night. And when I came to that particular point, I had suggested to Charlie, maybe you could have some idiot cards over on the side there, because that is a particularly difficult song. And there was Charlie over there with an idiot card, and it had on it, "Stop the music." Thank you, Charlie.
It's right too, in the fact that, because we were all upstairs changing our clothes. Now, My Fair Lady, sometimes people ask us, what is your favorite show ever, right? And we've done so many, it's hard to say favorite, but my absolute favorite ensemble show was My Fair Lady that Charlie directed. And I stage managed, and we put up your real lines up there, by the way. Okay. Yeah, you probably didn't see past his sign. But we're upstairs in the dressing room, because if we weren't on stage, if you didn't see the ensemble on stage, we were changing for the next scene, and changing quickly. So we were upstairs and we heard, "Stop the music." And we all froze, no matter where we were, because we're told, when something happens, hold where you are, because then you won't know really how much time you have to change during rehearsals and all that. So we froze and we're like, should we stop? Should we go? We had no idea what to do. So everybody affects everybody else, right? In some way on the stage.
Absolutely.
But it was such a great experience, that show. And Shawn was in it too. We were all lucky to be in it, that one.
And I'm going to meta-communicate for a moment. So Almy did a list of everything, and my first question was out of order. So she's already covered for that. I have to say, she makes me lists in the morning. By 5 o'clock or by 10 o'clock in the morning, I've lost my list. I don't even know where it is. So we're going to get back on track now.
Okay.
with where we were, just to let you know. You are both icons, clearly, of the Playhouse. And as I said to Judy beforehand, even if she weren't David's spouse, she would still be an icon for the Erie Playhouse. As icons, when you think about what you have inspired, what would you want your legacy to be here at the Playhouse? When people talk about Monsignor Tom or Judy. What is it, the things you want to be remembered for?
I want to be remembered for being a part of an organization that encouraged the whole group to be part of a family. We were the Playhouse family. We stuck together. We helped each other. If there was somebody in trouble with the line, somebody else would come up with the line and help them. Every night, not everybody knows this, the people that I see that here know it, but we had a prayer circle every night backstage before we went on. And then we also had what we called the necklace.
The necklace.
And every show got a little charm, and the charm was added to the necklace. And somebody who had the necklace would take it off and tell who they were going to give it to and why. And that just made us more of a family. I mean, we had one gal that told us that the Playhouse saved their life. She said she had an eating problem, and she said when she came and auditioned and was cast, she said she was in this show and she was now on the right track. And we've had people during those times, the Playhouse family times, that announced they were getting married. We've had people, it's a family. And that's the way the Playhouse during David's tenure was. It was a family. We supported each other no matter what, and we wanted to help other people. So.
Lovely. Legacies. I love teaching. And to have a student come up for events that we've had since I've been at Gannon and have been away from Gannon, say, I learned so much from you, or you told me that I should really submit my videotape for this award possibility with Steven Spielberg on California, but people were telling me, no. But you said, yeah, do that. And you get the feeling that maybe that was my mission, just to pass it on and to encourage people to do it. In terms of theater, I was reading about a biography on Ben Kingsley, the great actor, when he won the Oscar for Gandhi. And I think if there's anything that I would like to share with anybody, if there's a continuing legacy going, is the way he describes what we do as artists, not just the actor artist, but all of us, the collaborative aspect to what we do. And Ben Kingsley was asked, what is the thing that you've learned most about your craft? And this is the thing that I would like to pass on to anybody young, because it's true. He says, when you do art of any sort, you have to feel it. That, I think, is what the artist does. The artist allows us to feel that which we cannot comprehend. And that is the artist's great gift, to share that feeling. Stunning. How many artists are asked, well, could you explain to us what this means? And you have this. What do you feel? Are you happy after you've experienced this? Do you feel uplifted? Do you feel some emotion of pity or fear has been purged. That's what we do in the theater. And when you do it in live theater, it's palpable because you can sense the feeling as a shared communal experience. And if there were to be anything that I could pass on, I'd pass on Ben Kingsley's words, that as an artist, you feel it. And that's the artist's gift, is to communicate that feeling.
That's good. Thanks.
Well, I forgot to mention one very important thing, and that is that after we had our meeting before we did a show, we had a prayer circle, and then we passed the necklace on, and then before we came out, David or whoever was, Almy, it doesn't matter who was doing the show, give them love, and they'll give it back. And that went time after time after time. And people realized in the shows that when they were giving of themselves, the audience gave it back.
Precisely.
Which is so tied to what you both said the same thing essentially is that it is a communal effort, it is a family effort, but it's not just what happens on the stage, it's also that wonderful thing that happens going back to your Newell Tarrant. Look at the audience, they'll tell you.
Yeah.
They'll tell you. And I love that sense of community and connection.
Yeah. Thanks, Shawn.
Yeah.
During Les Mis, I went, we could see through this curtain over here. And so every night we would peek out and look and see who was in the audience and we would check it out, you know?
Yes.
That was fun.
I
yeah.
would never peek.
Oh, please, he would do that in a second. You were too busy in that one. We couldn't do that. So that's wonderful. Now, is there any show you would have wanted to do that you never got the chance to do? Anything?
Oklahoma for me.
Yeah.
I was able to be in the pit, but I wasn't on stage, and I loved that show.
Oh,
And of course, that was the very first start of when music furthered the story of the plot. And I conducted it a number of times, but I never had a chance to be in it, and I thought that would be great.
how about you, Monsignor? Any show?
I was just piggy rude. I got all these great roles for so many, you know.
Oh, I do with Marilyn Smith.
Oh,
you did?
I do. I mean,
There's
my
another
golly.
great lady.
Oh, yes.
Oh, my gosh. There's probably one show that I'd like to go back and do sometime. It was the first time it was out at the Peninsula Playhouse. It was a play by William Saroyan, very sentimental dramatist, who wrote a thing called The Cave Dwellers. And it takes place in New York City, and they're going to be tearing down this old theater. And there are a bunch of actors and technicians who are basically homeless, but they had been taking up residence in this shut up, falling down theater. And you get a sense of the whole idea of theater. And I would love to go back and do that show sometime. But if I may just add, the next show that I would like to do is just to be sitting right out here, part of that communal experience, because Zach and people here are continuing this great tradition of introducing kids to what we're talking about and having that
Education.
experience. Yeah. And my hat is off to you. Whatever legacy we think we have, it's in good hands with these people here.
Amen. Hey, Almy, is there a show that you wanted to do that you haven't gotten to yet?
A show I'd want to
Or a
do,
role that you wanted to play?
maybe next season. I have to wait to see what's coming up on this sneak preview on Sunday. Is that all right? How about you?
I always, I guess I always wanted to play the part of Millie in Thoroughly Modern Millie. I thought, I'm like Msgr. I've had so many great opportunities. Oh, you know a role that's now passed me by? It's probably Tevye. I've always wanted to be Tevye. I had a
Oh,
Judy Matthews model,
yes.
but Tevye would be great. But I think I'm a little long in the tooth for that one now.
Oh.
No.
Which is great. Yes.
Maybe no.
Yeah.
How about any of our audience physically here? Do you have any questions or thoughts or something you want to add? Or have you had an opportunity to work with these two lovely people? If you have any thoughts you want to share. Yeah, that's my mic doing that. Sorry. Trying to sit still. Anybody care?
Well, I think Jim Griffin.
Charlie.
Charles Portor?
No, going back to, I would not be who I am today if it wasn't for David and Judy.
Beautiful.
He was my mentor. He was my friend.
What do you say?
I learned so much from him. I got so many opportunities from him to do things, to direct, to choreograph, to do roles that I never thought I was right for, but ended up doing. And just the fact that the year I started, which was 1974, that was the year we lost the theater in Wesleyville. And were it not for David, God knows what would have happened to the Erie Playhouse, because for some reason he was not going to let it die. And there were only like 3 or 4 of us on staff at that point. And for the next, well, I don't know, for the next year, we were meeting in basements. We had offices. We were rehearsing any place we could just to keep the theater going. And thankfully, Fairview High School did come through for us, and that started it. And God knows why, but the audiences just followed us. And again, it was because David would not give up and instilled in that fire in all of us that were working at that point with him and just wanted to keep it going. So
Thank you for sharing that,
That's-
Charlie.
Well, and I'm going to throw
legacy.
something back at you, Charlie, too. I mean, everybody on this stage has taught me something. Judy taught me how to be the other man. When Almy was executive director, I realized the Playhouse was by far the most important thing. I was number 2, a close second, until Seamus came along and he replaced me. But Judy taught me how to be that rock person at the front. You taught me how to use my voice in TV, radio performance, and I still thank you for that 2-pitch thing that we learned way back when. Charlie, you taught me what was funny. Ben taught me how to cut any show down into 2 40-minute acts. and David in the Playhouse taught me how to cast a show. I think one of David's great strengths was putting the right people in the right roles. And sometimes we'd look at a cast list and go, what the hell were you thinking? And then you'd go to the opening night and get to opening and go, there it is. There it is. So I want to thank the legacy of the corporate legacy of the folks here that are gathered too. I mean, it is so collaborative, and we each have learned and given to each other. I think it's marvelous. Yeah.
And being a part of the youth theater program, David hired me in 1992 to do the youth theater program. And I still look back to the thousands of kids that were here. You know, they were our only really at that time, like group that would go out and travel, the showstoppers. So we had ambassadors that went out and loved doing that and giving the kids opportunities, different places to perform and to adjust on the spot like that. And, you know, we hear from kids that have made it to Broadway or, you know, Kristen Smiley in the Chicago area doing youth theater herself, or Danielle Sertz up in New England doing youth theater, things like that. But the parents I still get stopped and say, you know, my child did this show and this show with you, or Richard directed them in such and such a show. The confidence that they gained, the care that they took to do their part so the whole piece would be good. The fact they could stand up and talk to 4 people or 400 people and be comfortable speaking in front of a group of people. So I love when the kids make the transition to professional theater or do that, but I'm just so proud of the people we see that just have had their lives enriched because of the Playhouse and what they experienced here. Richard, I don't know if you have anything to add to that or any thoughts on that.
No?
No, I agree with you. It's really cool when people come back to you and they say, you know, some of my best memories are of you and what we did at the Playhouse. And it's just really fun when that happens,
Yeah.
make that connection.
You don't know what effect you have on people. And we all know that. You know, you don't know what you've said that's made them blossom or do something that way. But, and I do want to thank David for trusting me too with the development end of things. Going out and getting sponsors and things like that. And so very supportive of me the 20-some years we worked together. So just lucky to have David and Judy in my life, in our lives. And Seamus especially, lucky as heck, right? These kids, Andrew Rainbow's kids, any family, you treated us all like family. And that you know, obviously came across the footlights too, so.
And this was the Playhouse family.
Yep, absolutely.
That's the
absolutely.
way it was, yeah.
Any questions for Yes, Ms.
Who are some of the folks who got their start in Erie went on to national fame?
Okay, some of the folks that got their start in Erie and on to national fame. So others will have to help me with that too, because the youth theater kids that I know that went on to Broadway were Eric Scotto, Nick Adams, who were some of the other ones?
Julia Craig.
Julie Craig. She
Julian
was off
Decker.
Broadway,
Julian,
and
yeah.
Julian Decker. Julie Craig was off Broadway for months, if not, I think she did the
Years.
Fantastics
Yeah, that's right.
forever, long run there. So let's see. I'm trying to think, who else are some?
Oh, yeah, Regan Kennedy. Yeah.
Reagan Kennedy. Wydetta Carter went on to do professional theater.
That's right.
Who are some others? And then as Father Tom mentioned, the professionals that came to do theater in Erie at the Playhouse on West 7th Street, Rue McClanahan was there. You said Henry Forsyth and Don DeLuise.
Davis.
Amby Davis.
Davis, yeah.
There's more. There really are, Marty, and I wish I could think of them all right now, but
And then there are other people like Jim Wilhelm, God bless him,
all right.
who became one of the leading agents in New York City.
Right.
Imagine being an agent to Gloria,
Olivia de Havilland.
Olivia de
Yeah,
Havilland
yeah,
and so forth.
That's right.
And what he learned and did theater here, he took into Pittsburgh and then on to New York and
Chris
then
Grondahl. Yeah.
Oh,
Chris
yeah.
Groendahl.
Chris.
And then the kids that are back behind the scenes too. So Mike Carnes, who's a producer now on Broadway, and oh my gosh, Dominic Barbaro,
Dominic Barbaro,
PR, and Kevin Hurst. They're all have their hands in the
Josh Cashone.
business
Yeah,
end
all
of
them.
theater, professional theater, and there's more. So.
But
yeah.
this was their launching pad, Marty. Can you imagine? Yeah.
And it's very strange. Eric Scotto was in one of the Matthews trips to New York. We went and saw Annie Get Your Gun with Bernadette Peters. Changed orchestrations. We had a lot of questions about the production, but Eric Scotto was in it, and I went backstage with him before the evening show or something like that. And he said, I said, all the mics were there, and Bernadette's costume was there, and her waist was about this big. You know, the dress was hanging there, one of her costumes. And I said, the one kid came by and said, okay, microphones. I said, oh, here's yours right here. And he goes, don't touch it. Well, I wasn't going to touch it. But he said, no, I wasn't. He said, I'm not allowed to touch the microphone. The sound person has to hand it to me, has to be, so they each have their little jobs. Here, dear God, you can run sound, you can run lights, you can be backstage, you can be in the show, in the pit, you can do all those things. So those kids learned everything here. And then they fell into the areas of theater that they loved.
Yeah.
They really did. So, and you can't do stuff. And then he was going to another show, and I said, Eric, aren't you going to miss this show? He goes, Elmy, it's a job.
Yeah.
And we don't think of theater as a job because it's our hobby. I mean, some of us were lucky to have a job in theater, right? That's because they're hard to come by, but okay, it's not about me, but yeah, a lot of good people, a lot of doing good work out there, and they learned it all here, so.
I just wanted to be able to add this. We have had the privilege of working with so many icons. For instance, I wrote them down so that I wouldn't remember. We have these two icons that have been a very instrumental thing in carrying on with the theater. But Leo Estes, Joe Palca, John Burton, George Newbert, Rabbi Lifshin. We didn't talk about Tevye and that. Ben Agresti, Tammy Roach, who is now Tammy
Gandolfo, yeah.
Jim Gandolfo.
Yeah.
Gandolfo.
And Jim's a
Jim. We have had Charlie, Joe Hassler, and he was, if you didn't know, he was the magical designer of shows and builders. Tom McSweeney, Marilyn Smith, Ray Flint, Christy Kuntz, Lillian Rothstein, Richard Davis. These are, I mean, it's not
Mina
anywhere near.
Eisenberg.
Mina Eisenberg. You know,
Mine is still here.
Mine is still
The
here.
ghost is downstairs. That's another icon.
That's a story
but-
for another day.
Yeah.
yeah. But it's been a privilege to be here with the Erie Playhouse for all these years. These people have been wonderful.
That's great. Well, great. Thank you so much, Zach. I think you'll have to play us out, I think. But thank you both for your time, and thank you for your inspiration, and thanks for being who you are. We're very grateful.
Nicely done.
I just want to very quickly also add my thanks. It was such a pleasure to have these Playhouse icons with us today and to share such wonderful stories about our Playhouse family. And I just want to personally add that I'm so grateful to be a part of that family. I actually first met David when I was at Gannon. He came to see Cabaret and was so kind to me after the show and encouraged me to come to cattle call auditions. And I got cast, I've said it many times before, as a knife in Beauty and the Beast. And that was my start at the Playhouse. And 20 some years later, here we are. So I did. Thank you, Almy. I met my wife at the Playhouse, important to mention as well. So add me to that list of people who found their spouse and started their own family through the Playhouse family. So let's just hear another round of applause for these wonderful panelists today. And a reminder, other Playhouse Week events coming up. We have the Playhouse Family Potluck on Saturday at Frontier Park, and then the launch party on Sunday, starting at 6 o'clock next door at 5 Iron, performance at 7:15, and then back over to 5 Iron for desserts afterward as well. So once again, thank you for our panelists, and everybody have a great night. Thank you for being with us tonight.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Zach.
Now, this is the part where they roll the credits and we like greet each other. while
Yeah.
they say